Because when we're out of whack, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, when we're out of whack, bad posture, compensation. But what it does is it sends messages to our nervous system. Our nervous system sends messages to the rest of our body, hey, we're not safe. We're going to do everything we can to keep you safe here, but act as if you're getting chased by a tiger. When that happens, there's everything from inflammation to lack of clarity in the decision-making and brain, but mainly your joints are also restricted. It doesn't allow you to move freely because everything is saying, hold up, you're not in a safe space. We're going to tighten things up like the hamstrings, the pelvis tips forward, hamstrings are tight. They're tight for a reason. So then that would limit hip mobility.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Clearing the Bases, the podcast where we step up to the plate and dive deep into the world of youth baseball. I'm your host, Jimmy Filangieri. On this show, we discuss all things related to the preparation and development of youth baseball players, coaches, and yes, even parents. So sit back, settle in, and get ready to hear from some of the greatest baseball minds out there.
It's not about, I'm going to do all these things that are fancy and sexy, as some people call, or I'm just going to stick with what works. Well, times have changed. And so we kind of have to also, and just kind of being humble and open and say, you know what? Am I going to be willing to just try one thing? That's what I said at the summit in Augusta. I think I showed you guys one drill, or maybe a couple drills. And I just said, if you just take one of any of the drills from my mobility warm-up and bring it back, one. I'm only going to show you one because just bring this one back. And then next year, I'll show you another one and bring that one back. Over time, little by little by little, you'll pick it up.
To be able to reach the highest levels of this game, you got to work hard. You got to get in the cages. You got to do your strength and conditioning. You got to throw your bullpens. There's all of this physical stuff that you need to do, and you need to work hard at it. But don't forget that you also have to get better at the mental side of the game. And one of the ways you can do that is increase baseball IQ by downloading and using the 6-Tool app.
For baseball coaches like you, every game brings measurable progress. However, game time isn't the time for trial and error learning. Instead, have a proactive approach. Use 6-Tool, the best baseball player development tool on the market. We provide a platform to level up your coaching strategy by helping you to quickly identify and address your players' knowledge of the game. By using our easy-to-implement interactive player quizzes, you can assess position-specific issues, overall baseball IQ, and much more. Win more games and develop better overall baseball players with effective off-the-field training. Visit us at 6-tool.com. 6-Tool. Get ahead in the game.
Okay, everybody. So what I'm going to tell you to do is get your exercise mat, put on a pair of shorts, maybe a tank top. You don't need sneakers for this. You could be, in socks. Because tonight's guest is Tracy Tanguay. She is a mobile expert, also known as the Mobility Chick. Her expertise is in mobility, injury prevention, performance enhancement, and athlete development. Tracy has worked with players and coaches from 27 of the 30 Major League Baseball organizations, from A-ball players to all-stars. She has been featured on MLB.com for her movement and mobility work with the Baltimore Orioles and has worked with tons of high school and college teams. Tracy regularly consults with big league coaches for her expertise in training quality movement patterns, the space and transitions between positions, and mobility specifically as it relates to athletic performance and staying healthy. She has a degree in neuroscience and cognitive science from Northwestern University, and I'm not even going to tell you that I know what that is, but it sounds real good. She has over 1,000 hours in yoga training. She's a master Pilates instructor and has a boatload of education, certifications, and experience. I had the pleasure of meeting and collaborating with Tracy at last year's Youth Baseball Summit in Augusta, Georgia. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Jimmy, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for that really glowing introduction. It makes me sound kind of smart, huh?
Well, you are smart. And I got to tell you, it took my breath away. That was long.
Oh, a lot of big words, right?
Oh,
Oh,
God.
gosh.
So, let's jump right into things here. So let's, give us an idea of your journey. Like, how did you get to where you are?
I like that question. For those listening, if you haven't ever listened to me before, you're in for a little, I go on tangents and then I have tangents on those tangents. And then if Jimmy can help me bring back to where I was talking, then we might like seal it all up. So, here we go. So I've been in fitness and training and body and biomechanics for a long time. I'm old. Well, maybe
I was
I'm
going to
compared to
say,
you.
no, you're not.
Kidding. I've been around for a while, and I've always just been interested in how to move the body intentionally and how to kind of work the right things. 25 plus years ago, I was a personal trainer and a Pilates instructor, and just with regular people, non-athletes, I was never doing the normal stuff with people in the gym, just like the regular chest press or the machines or whatever. I always felt like there was more to it, but 25 plus years ago, nobody was really talking about the underlying structure or how to move intentionally or how to move really the right way. And over the years, even though I thought I knew a boatload back then, I thought I was so smart, there's this learning curve. I don't know what it's called, but it's like the least amount that you know or the less you know, you feel like you know everything. And then the more you learn, you realize, holy shit, I don't know jack squat. And then it's kind of embarrassing thinking that you had this authority when you were, less educated and experienced. And I feel like that's a little bit of my journey because the more I went along, the more I realized, oh my God, I'm telling these people to do these things. And even though a lot of it honestly was right back then, there's so much more to it now. So how it's evolved into sports and athletes is I was actually married to a pro baseball player, and he was doing training for the team in his off season. And I took a look at it and I just thought, why are they giving you this? Like, this is just like such basic stuff. And again, this is 25 years ago. So I will say a lot of the off-season training for teams, pro teams, has changed a lot. But back then, it was just really basic stuff. There was no little like stabilizer muscle exercises besides just like T's, Y's, and I's with the bands. There was really no balance training or no real core and rotational work. So I worked with him and one of his off seasons. And then as time went on, I got into more yoga and intentional movement and kind of flowy stuff. And I was invited by the Kansas City Royals to teach yoga to their players during spring training. And this was 15, 20 years ago when nobody was really doing it. So it was a really big, far stretch for the team to invite me. And even I remember Trey Hillman was the big league coach at the time, and he went on the news to say, yeah, there's this woman doing some strange stuff with the players. I was like, at least say like it was great. So it's just been really interesting to see how things have evolved 15, 20 years ago to now. Players are more into what is happening in their body. So how that's evolved for me is I not only got to see movement from the high level athlete, I was also a collegiate athlete, and I got to see what that lifestyle was like. And I was an athlete growing up. But then inside as a player's wife and how the organizations treated each person, each individual athlete, I got to see that aspect. And then I got integrated with some of the coaches in the front office, still as a player's wife, which I want you to know, a lot of people might think, hey, you got in with pro baseball because you were married to one. That is actually, I feel like it's a much harder route when you're married to somebody because everyone just thinks, well, the wives are going to expect, special treatment because their guy plays. And it's the complete opposite. Like you have to prove the crap out of yourself. So I did. And then it went well. And then I took some time off. I was a stay-at-home mom for a lot of years. And then as my kids started getting a little bit older, I wanted to go back to just doing things for me. And it centered around that movement again. So I just dove back into kind of where I left off, diving into biomechanics and DNS, which is dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, which is developmental kinesiology, more Pilates stuff, the stuff called Eldoa, which works with the joints and creating expansion in each and every joint in the body. I feel like there's a whole, PRI, Postural Restoration Institute, which is really big with creating creating balance within the underlying structure of the body. And kind of all of those systems, what's really interesting is as I went through my trainings and experience and working with coaches and teams along the way, if you go to one of those trainings and you drink the water, you think this method is going to fix everything. And then you just want to just keep drinking the Kool-Aid there. Did I say drink the water, Kool-Aid, whatever, same thing. Water's the healthy version of Kool-Aid.
We understood what you meant.
Yeah, I got it. And also, this is another thing. When I listened back to podcasts later, I realized I completely said the wrong word. Hopefully people figure it out. So as I went along, I'm recognizing that there's so many good parts of each different method of training that these really high-level pro athletes are doing, but none of them really gets all of it. And so I started to think, okay, if I were to put together a program that would bring in everything that I know, but then intuitively what I feel is right. I'm also intuitive, I'm clairaudient, I hear things. So I work with clients, I just kind of like go off into space, I get messages, and I work that way as well. And which is weird for some people, but now I'm comfortable with it because it works. So I tell everybody. I also don't take breaths in between my words. So I'm going to take one right now while everybody laughs. Okay. So when COVID happened is when COVID, when all went down, is right about when I was kind of coming back from motherhood, full-time motherhood. And I thought, how could I help players? And I was about to get on a plane out to Arizona to go meet with the people that I knew. Now, at this point, a lot of the players who were players when my ex played are now coaches and managers and front office people. I was about to hop on a plane, and that's when they shut the world down. They sent all the players home for spring training. All the gyms are closed. Nobody has any idea how they're going to work out, how long they're going to be home. Are we even going to have a season? So I started putting on a yoga class for pro baseball guys every single day that they were home. It was like 9 or 10 a.m. Whoever was there, we're going to do straight old school yoga. And people showed up. It was great. So I not marketed it, but I let everybody, I'm in this secret Baseball Wives Facebook group. I happen to be an admin on it. So I shared it with some of my baseball wives, and people showed up. And then the wives showed up. I think I had an NFL cheerleader or two in there as well. It's kind of cool. And then, so spring training was at home. Then when they were coming back, the Orioles reached out to me and said, hey, will you lead the first workouts for the guys who are currently quarantined in the hotel? So all, the big league team, they were all in the hotel. They got back from home and they couldn't be around anybody for, I don't know, it was like 24 hours or 40 a week, whatever it was. So I led virtual classes, mobility classes for all of the big league team. And I don't know if there might have been minor league guys there to help get them ready and transition them back into on-field work. And that's when I worked with the Orioles. I worked with some of the coaches there and mentored them on mobility. And one of them ended up becoming the head mobility coach there, strength coach, but the head point of contact for mobility. And then it kind of kept going and going and going from there. I then created a 12-week off-season mobility series where I integrated everything that I've done. I was starting to say this. Everything that I've done, I then put into a program. And I didn't really know, honestly, where it would go, if anybody would show up or register. But I put it out there, and the second guy to register was Lorenzo Cain. And I didn't know who he was, and everyone's like, "Hey, this guy's that's a good thing." Even though I was a baseball wife, everybody's just friends and cool and normal, so nobody's a big deal to me because everybody's a big deal. And I kind of went from there, and I didn't know if it was going to work. I just put in what I thought. If you were to build the body from the ground up to have it moving in the most optimal, healthy way, what would it be? So that's what I did. At the end of that season, so the guys finished then they went to the season. That was 2021, I think. I then took their stats from the 2021 season after they did my mobility series, the off season prior. And there were a ton of stats that improved wildly. So we ran the stats, and I had a statistician that was Harvard educated and played pro baseball himself run the stats. So I didn't know what they are. I just said, hey, if you find anything meaningful in there, let me know. Their home run rate, 100% of them increased their home run rate, and it was like 80% of them doubled it, or nearly doubled. It was something really big. Their ERAs went down by 0.63. Wow. Their K per 9 rate improved. Their injury rate decreased significantly compared to the minor league average. There were a couple guys who made their big league debut. I'm pretty sure Jake Cousins was one of the ones who made their big league debut, and then he went on to play with the Yankees in the World Series last year. So there was a lot of really, really cool stuff. Catchers really did well. They felt such improvements in their body. So at the end of that season, I was pretty pumped. Wow, all I did was put this program together that I felt like would enhance everything, and it also enhanced their performance. So that's kind of where I got into even more so with baseball. So then I had coaches from several teams do the program the following off season, and guys who noticed how the other ones did during the season. Hey, what did you do? Oh, there's this, chick named Tracy. Here's her program. And word of mouth, here we go. And however many years, 5 years later, I now speak internationally on movement optimization and mobility. I worked with the German national baseball team to get them ready for the World Baseball Classic this past winter, and just a whole bunch of stuff just keeps evolving. So I know your question was 10 minutes ago. I was like, how did you get into this? But it's just a really cool kind of story of how it evolved. And really what it came down to is just me trusting my inner guidance of what should I do next? And a lot of fear going into it. Well, what if nobody shows up? What if people get hurt? And it just went really, really well, and it continues to. And I'm grateful that what's coming next.
Yeah. I mean, that always makes it interesting, right? Where you don't know what's ahead of you, and you keep trying to build and build and build, and look, like you said, look at where you've come in just a short period of time. I mean, that's a fantastic accomplishment. But let me ask you this, because there's a couple of things that I need to understand. Number one, what's the biggest common thread or the biggest need that you say in athletes? And what I would like you to do, if you can, is, gear the answer more towards high school players and youth players.
Yeah. Okay. That's a question that I've pondered a lot, and I've had since, we're on the youth committee, the ABCA youth committee. Honestly, the biggest thing is learning how to make the movements with precision and move with intention. So what I've seen at the pro level, guys, their body's underlying structure is kind of out of whack, but it's not horrible. Kids, youth level, for the most part, their body's in whack. The high school kids are so freaking out of whack. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And what happens is they don't have the awareness, and they don't have the coaches who are forcing them to be really intentional in their movements. And maybe the coaches don't even know what the proper movements are. And then they get stuck on video games and telephones and their computers, and they just get stuck in these poor movement patterns. And then they just keep going and going and going. So they're completely out of whack. So the biggest need that I feel is there's just a couple fundamentals that they need to know. And one of them is their posture really matters. And there's a cue that I use. It's called triple S. If you were to take a broomstick or a mobility stick, a PVC or something, and put it on your back, from your back to your head, what you want touching is your sacrum, which is the flat triangular bone right above your butt crack, actually. Everybody's got one easy landmark. Find your butt crack right above there's a flat. That's your sacrum. And then the space between your shoulder blades, which is between your scapula, that's the other S. So sacrum, scapula, and then skull, the back of your head. If you put the mobility stick there and you had all three of those points touching, we know that for the most part, our rib cage is neutral, stacked over a mostly neutral pelvis, and then our head's in alignment with all of that, with our spine. Anytime you have a forward head, if anybody's watching, a forward head, that's an energy leak. And then there's a compensation happening. Anytime there's a compensation happening, you're putting more stress on particular areas of the body that most likely, specifically in baseball, you have these repetitive motions hundreds or thousands of times. It wears it down over time. So somebody might not get injured right away, but over time, the compensations are putting so much stress. So by the time they get to late youth or high school, and then a lot of times it's a lot of injuries are happening a lot younger because of this poor movement and poor posture. So if you can integrate just that posture into exercises, when you do hinges, or if you're in the gym doing strength training, being mindful of the position, that triple S, but then also mindful of how you're moving. You mentioned something in a specialty or kind of what I do, and it's no energy leaks through transitional movements, being intentional through the transitions. My mobility series works on the space between positions. So if you've got position A, like, you ever hear those exercises called a hip airplane, where you kind of standing on one leg, and then you bring your body out parallel with the ground on one leg, and then you stand up, and then you go down. That one's a really good if you're thinking about it. Most people do it absolutely crappy, and it's worse doing it crappy for you than doing it at all. So there's three little cues that I like to integrate into every single thing that I do, and it helps with the no energy leaks. The first one is that triple S, but then also working with what I call opposition. If you imagine pushing the ends of your body, wherever they are, elbows, head, feet, knees, in opposite directions while you're moving, it helps to create more intention in those transitional spaces. So for the hip airplane, for instance, if you're standing up, anybody who's listening and you listened to Jimmy in the beginning and you went out and got a yoga mat and a tank top or barefoot, and you happen to be standing, stand and bring one knee up. So you're standing on one leg. While you're standing there, and you could do this while you're sitting, think about pressing the standing foot through the ground and the crown of the head up to the ceiling. The second you do that, it creates more what's called dynamic tension through the body. When you have more dynamic tension, or kind of like taking the slack out of the line, that helps to integrate more of the muscles and the fascia and the stuff in between that helps to transfer energy, and it helps to lessen compensations. So if your head is hanging forward, you cannot do opposition, and you cannot do the triple S. If your head is hanging forward and you do opposition, you naturally, if you're sitting, you would stick your sits bones, your butt bones into a chair and your head through the ceiling. If you do that, it automatically cleans up your posture. You can't have a forward head if you're doing opposition. So in that standing, going back to, I'm going between standing and sitting, whichever one you're doing. If you're standing in the hip airplane, while you're transferring into that kind of hinge, one-legged hinge, into the airplane portion of it, if you think about pushing the leg through the ground, starting and the head going up, well, as you start to move, now think about you have two different angles. You now have the top of your head and the foot that's off the ground. You also have the foot that's on the ground and the hip at the top of that leg. The second you integrate that opposition in the movement, your form automatically gets cleaned up. But then you also, what you're doing is moving with intention and reducing energy leaks. Anytime an energy leak is reduced, you're helping to also lessen compensations. You're also maximizing energy transfer. So when you maximize energy transfer and lessen compensations, that relates to decreased energy, or decreased injury is the word. So decreased injury and increased performance, increased ability to lift weights, more weights, train harder, and everything. That's what That's how all those guys lowered their ERA and hit more bombs and stayed healthier because they learned that intentional movement. And as in youth, when I coached my son's little league, it's like wrangling cats, feral cats. I get it. So you have to start, if you're a parent or you're a coach, it's just integrating these things really simply at first and one thing at a time. Master one thing. It might take an entire week of practices to do the same stupid, ridiculously simple. It's not stupid. It was like stupid simple is what I wanted to say. Like crazy simple things. And then the brain mapping happens. So it's not that these kids don't get it or they don't want to listen. A lot of times they've never done it before. So they're like, what the heck? We have to help lay down the neural pathways in the brain. All of our brains work with it's called brain mapping neural pathways, these little pathways in our brain that automatically do things. The first time we do a new movement or we feel a different sensation in our body, many times we can't access it or we can't do it, and it's really frustrating. But the more we do it, it's kind of like walking through, those cornfields out in the middle of Iowa? It's like corn for days. The first time, if somebody said, hey, there's a barn on the other side, you're going to go from the street to the barn, good luck. The first time you go through, you're going to be bushwhacking. You're going to end up with cuts. You'll probably come across a snake and some other, like a bobcat or something. Who knows? But you get to the barn. The next day, the farmer says, hey, come back. You have no idea where that path was because you just went through it one time. But if you go through that path 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 100 times, next thing you know, the path is really easy to notice. And it's just like, boop, go through. And then you can just drive a car through there. Then you don't even have to know where the path is. That's how instant it becomes. It's the same thing with kids, youth, college, and and us, as elderly, we're not elderly, but older folks. We just have to train the brain through the frustration. And we need to be patient enough if we're the coach or the parent, patient enough to let our kids struggle and just keep redirecting kindly, lovingly, supportingly in order to get the cornfield, the path down. And it's just a couple things. It's just that triple S, that opposition, and the opposition helps to clean up the space between the transitions and just moving with intention. And really if I were going to say anything, the biggest need, it's those two things. I can give you a bunch of drills to do. I can send everybody, there's a free warm-up I have on my Instagram or my website. And those have a bunch of the drills that I would recommend that are different than the type of drills that everybody did, the old school drills. We don't do static anymore. And a lot of the drills that people do are a total crap. Shouldn't even do them. But people are, and it's like, if you just tweak a couple things, it makes a massive impact. And just start small. Start with one thing and move from there. Yeah.
I love what you said about breaking it down to its simplest form, because again, that's really no different than baseball training. If we take the very basic movements of a particular, drill that a player has to do, that's the way I do it, is I break it down to its simplest form. Like, in other words, if I want my players to get their fingers down in the dirt when they're fielding a ground ball, just, get in an athletic position and present your glove. That's it. Yeah. That's as simple, because like you said, then over time of doing that hundreds and thousands of times, then when you present your glove, you're going to do it the way that simple movement was done. So I love that you said that. But let me ask you this question. One other thing I want to touch on, because you mentioned about static stretching and how that's no good. Explain that.
So many times people are stretching muscles that feel tight when the body is creating that tightness or tautness as a strategy to keep the body safe. So the hamstrings, for instance, a lot of people have tight hamstrings. And it's not because they're too short and they need to be lengthened. What usually is the case is there's some orientation with their pelvis that is out of whack. I'll just use the example of an anterior pelvic tilt, because a lot of people have heard that. If your pelvis was a bucket a straight up and down bucket. And if the bucket tipped forward, and you imagine your pelvis tipping forward, it arches your back and it creates this arching of your back and then a flaring of the rib cage. And I completely lost my train of thought.
Happens to me all the time.
Oh my God.
You were saying, you were talking about your hamstrings and the bucket.
Okay. So if the pelvis is tipped forward, you have to envision your body structure and muscles for a second. Think about your pelvis and your butt. Below your butt, the muscle that goes basically from your butt to the back of your knee is your hamstrings. Well, if the pelvis is tipping forward, then the back of the pelvis is now lifting up. So it's pulling the muscle longer. Well, the muscle would appear or feel, give you this sensation, the message of tightness, because it is being stretched to the hilt. So from a safety perspective, to keep everything safe and, working right, this muscle is being really stretched out. Well, these people who think static stretching is a great idea, then go stretch the hamstrings that are already stretched. It's putting more stress on a muscle that is doing its job to keep you safe. So that kind of goes along with everything. So if you have a tight muscle, many times it's not because it's short, it's because it's longer than it should be. So we want to do exercises that would shorten them or get them at a place of homeostasis, in a place of balance. So the static stretching, is there ever a place in baseball when any part of your body is static? I mean, okay, maybe in the outfield, players are sitting waiting for, youth, you're waiting there for a while, but realistically speaking, it's an active sport. You're moving, you're not sitting at a desk. So why would we stretch a muscle that may not even be needed to be stretched? But then how is that going to affect the rest of our body and our joints? So we want to move dynamically. And dynamically doesn't mean running across the field, lifting our knees up or kicking our butt or walking lunges. I see a lot of them. If where I am now working with the pro, the highest level of athlete possible, is working the muscles to a state of balance in a way that you're kind of going to use them, but also helping all the stabilizer muscles as well. It's not just how can we max out on what we're already going to do? It's how can we prep, not only physically, but from a brain standpoint. How can we prep the brain and the body to then be ready and warm for what's to come? So static stretching can have its place. I'm not going to totally poo-poo it because there are a couple places that I would integrate it, but it definitely wouldn't be in a warm-up at all. And you're just not getting your bang for your buck. There's no bucks being had for any bang. There's no bang in static stretching whatsoever. So moving in, I like to integrate what I call DNS, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization exercises, and I'll explain that. So every baby, unless they're an anomaly, unless there's some medical problem, every baby develops the same way from in utero to brand new baby, and each month, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, to how they go from on their back to rolling to on their side to a kneel to a stand to walking. It's all the same. And there's a lot of different ways that doctors can establish whether a kid is delayed or not based on little movements that they're making. Because we know, okay, at 3 months, a baby should be able to do this. At 3.5 months, it's this. 4. Well, because everybody, how do I explain this? Because everybody develops in the same way, they found that is when the body is most in balance. Even though kids aren't walking, we work with stabilizing muscles to help activate other muscles to then help progress you to the next level. So they found that when you go back and mimic these exercises that you've done as a kid, as a baby, it actually cleans up and rewires the brain and the body to get rid of all the old shit and all the old compensations and the poor posture and the lack of stabilization in different areas of the body. in a really amazing, like really amazing way. It's like if I were to drink water of any program or method, it would probably be developmental kinesiology because it's kind of mind blowing that if you just go into a position of a happy baby or a dead bug and you have particular points that are touching the body and you do it with certain intent, it cleans up thing. It not only can be used as a what's the word I'm looking for, like an assessment, but it also is used for strengthening what's wrong. A lot of people do. I'm going to go. I know we're talking about static stretching, but I'm going to stick with this kind of warming up and dynamic stuff. If you were to go on your back in this dead bug position where you're lying on your back, right? And you bring your arms kind of up in the air and your knees kind of over your hips. If you create what's called intra-abdominal pressure, where you press the air in your belly from inside out, it's the opposite of sucking your belly in. You're not pushing it out, but you're kind of pressing air in 360 degrees in your abdominal wall, to the sides, and in the back. The second you do that, it helps to clean up some back stuff and hip stuff. If you then move in that exercise, so there's a dynamic portion, and I think we did this in Augusta. I think I had you guys maybe on the ground. You lie on the ground and then you roll to one side into like a low side plank. The action of that alone is cleaning up old crud, old pathways, those brain mapping, the old neural pathways in your brain, to help then create better shoulder stabilization and hip stabilization, which then when you have better positioning of each of those joints, you then improve your mobility naturally. I kind of want to talk about what we did in Augusta.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things we did in Augusta, I had everybody on the ground. These are, coaches from tons of organizations and maybe even around the world, really just amazing people. And I said, all right, everybody's going to lie on the ground. We're going to test our internal rotation. Everybody's lying on the ground. They pull out their right arm. They put their elbow down. And I said, I get an idea of what your IR looks like. And most people were crap, right? Maybe a couple people were halfway deep. Most were like a little embarrassing. So I then had everybody on their side in a side plank. And this is a drill that you can find on my website. It's in my latest warm up, but this is the number one drill that I have every single athlete do because it helps to clean up so much shit. And then you find out it's kind of magic too. So everybody's on their side and their elbows directly underneath their shoulder. They're kind of in this low side plank, their hips on the ground. And I have you press your forearm through the ground like you're trying to make an imprint in it. And then you rotate your body kind of towards the ground as you inhale, pressing your elbow and forearm into the ground. And then you exhale to open back up. And so you inhale to rotate down. Maybe I'll post it on my Instagram soon, so then it's kind of fresh in the feed. When you do that, what it's doing, so it's dynamic, we're moving, but we're also including breath work to create expansion and to help reposition the joint. When our joints are in an optimal position, in a neutral position, we naturally have better range of motion. Because when we're out of whack, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, when we're out of whack, bad posture compensations, but what it does is it sends messages to our nervous system. Our nervous system sends messages to the rest of our body, hey, we're not safe. We're going to do everything we can to keep you safe here, but act as if you're getting chased by a tiger. When that happens, there's everything from inflammation to lack of clarity in the decision-making and brain, but mainly your joints are also restricted. It doesn't allow you to move freely because everything is saying, hold up, you're not in a safe space. We're going to tighten things up like the hamstrings, the pelvis tips forward, hamstrings are tight. They're tight for a reason. So then that would limit hip mobility. So going back to this drill, these guys do these exercises, inhale, exhale. It looks mostly easy. And I think it is fairly easy. You just got to do it kind of right. So then after they do maybe 3, 4, 5 of these, I have everybody lie on their back, bring their arm out, test their IR, and everyone gasps. And Jimmy, do you remember this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Everybody all around the room, hey, did anybody have an improvement? And I hear everyone laughing, like, how'd you do that? It was like a magic.
Right, it was like a magic trick, yes.
It is like everybody who just previously saw that their IR was shit is now like, wow, I could probably throw 100 right now, you know? So what we just did is we dynamically move. We were moving. We weren't just stretching something. We were moving in a position that's related to that developmental kinesiology. We did it when we were a kid. You see kids roll over, and there's a position where you roll over and they're kind of on their side. Well, then how I incorporate things or I integrate things, I integrate expansion work. This PRI, Postural Restoration Institute, talks about using breath work for expansion and expansion and balancing the underlying structure. Well, that particular drill helps to reposition the joints. Well, then when we reposition the joints and you move with intention, and we are in that triple S position, but then we use our breath to create expansion in areas of our body that were all junked up. It then sends a message to our nervous system, you are safe. The gates are open. We can naturally open. So then everybody gains 15 degrees of IR easily by doing nothing other than telling your brain, hey, you're safe. It's not like the sleeper stretch. Never do it. If you're listening and you or anyone you know is still doing the sleeper stretch where you're cranking down, do not ever do it. It's tight for a reason. Do the drill that I just said, and you'll easily get 10 to 15 degrees if you are limited. So to bring it all back together, static stretching, it's a lot of times it's doing more harm than good. And there are so many things out there that if you just start simply and add one thing at a time are so much better to prep the brain and the body.
Another thing that you had mentioned at the summit that impressed me, because I seem to have a problem with this, is you had mentioned about the solar plexus, okay, and how like everything is like built off of that, or I'm not sure if I'm explaining it right, but maybe you can get into that a little bit.
So everything from the middle, I think it was more like about the diaphragm, and I might have mentioned solar plexus in there. It's just interesting that you remembered that. And if this isn't what you were thinking, feel free to cut me off. But this one is important. So when we have that anterior tilt that I was just talking about, the forward tip of the pelvis, that automatically forces your spine to arch. And when the spine arches, the rib cage lifts up. The second you have a rib cage where you can feel the bottom of, you are instantly limiting your thoracic mobility and trunk rotation and ability to get a really nice stretch of this, what's called anterior oblique sling. It's this kind of like elastic from the front of your body across that allows you to really get the throw and what's the word? I can't think of the right word, but like the sling, the elasticity of, there's a word that everybody uses in baseball, but I can't think of it right now. But when you have an anterior tilt with the rib cage, it inhibits that ability. So when we do exercises to help get our rib cage stacked over our pelvis neutrally, and we don't have a flaring rib cage, it then opens up the ability to rotate I was going to say rotate thoracically, but just our thoracic to rotate and our trunk to do the motions that we need to for overhead throwers and rotational athletes. But also, when our rib cage, and this is the part that you might have been talking about, when our rib cage is flared, we have this muscle underneath it called the diaphragm. I used to think the diaphragm was like a little valve. I'll be honest, I had no idea what it was. The diaphragm is a really big muscle underneath our lungs that look like kind of like two parachutes connected underneath our lungs. And when we take a breath of air, the air goes in our lungs and then it pushes down on the diaphragm. So the diaphragm flattens out and it's in a state of contraction. Like if we were doing a bicep curl, our muscles contracted while we have the weight up all the way lifted up to our shoulder with a weight in our hand. When we inhale, our diaphragm is flat and is contracted. What happens when our rib cage is flared, it doesn't create this container for our diaphragm to ever go into a state of full relaxation. It kind of always stays flat in some way because it doesn't have it's like a jail. I would say the container doesn't have that area where it holds it in place to fully relax. And because it's going to stay in that state of contraction, a muscle in a constant state of contraction specifically and especially our diaphragm. Our diaphragm connects everything in our body: digestion, our brain, our thinking, our seeing, our feeling, our clarity, our movement, literally everything. And a lot of things I didn't mention because I don't remember all of them right now. But so if our body is in a constant state of contraction, you remember I had said anything that if we're in a state of contraction and it puts our body in the state of fight or flight. When we are in a state of fight or flight, it's telling our nervous system that we are not safe. If our nervous system is not safe, it says to the rest of our body, hold up, put the locks on, put the brakes on. It creates inflammation, lack of clarity, compensations, muscles that are tight and they shouldn't be, loose when they shouldn't be. And it just honestly messes up the whole system. And there's another layer to this. When someone is tweaking mechanics, whether it's hitting or pitching mechanics, any types of mechanics, if the underlying structure of the body is out of whack or in a state of fight or flight, because we've got a flared rib cage or a forward head or bad posture or a hip hike or something, no matter how many times you work with a player to adjust their grip and their mechanics or whatnot, it will never fully naturally stick because our brain is saying, fuck off, basically. I probably shouldn't say F. But it's like, no way. Like you're going to try to do this thing over here, but I'm telling you, we can't do that. And when the nervous system is not feeling safe, nothing will totally stick naturally. So when you can work on the underlying structure, going back to the things that I mentioned earlier on, what can you do? The triple S, the opposition, moving with intention, the developmental kinesiology, it helps to get the rib cage in this nice stacked position, not flared. When it is stacked, our diaphragm can then finally relax. It then opens the gates. It gives us that extra 15 degrees of ROM. It helps with mental focus and clarity, reduces anxiety, helps us sleep better. Our digestion is better. Everything is better. And then when you go to tweak mechanics, lots of times you don't even have to really tweak mechanics because the body naturally is cleaning up what you were already trying to fix. If something is kind of off in the mechanics or the swing or the throw or whatever, it's likely because there's a compensation happening because your body is trying to say, keep me safe. Well, once you get safe, all the movement is just so much more fluid because your nervous system is now aligned and it's allowing it to work as it should. So now if you work on little tweaks here and there, they stay. Because our body is giving it permission, like, oh, it's moving like it should. Oh, you want to like tweak your fingers here and hold the ball differently? You want to hold this? Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to allow you to do that. And then it stays. So with this like solar plexus, and it just like really comes from the center. The diaphragm is, when you allow it to relax, it puts everything in balance.
I love it. I love it. And yes, that's what I was talking about because that's the thing that caught my attention about it was how, it makes your body relax, and there's so many other things that happen with it. I just thought it was interesting. I thought people needed to hear that. Let's jump into something that I wanted to ask you in the very beginning, and I didn't get to, but is there a difference between mobility and flexibility?
Great question. Yes. So flexibility is where your body can go passively and kind of what your body can naturally do without adding work or effort to it. So flexibility and also goes along with kind of what I was talking about if your body is feeling safe. Some people, you have hypermobile people. Some people you just have who are completely inflexible. If they're completely inflexible, there's probably other things going on. The underlying structure is out of whack. There might be some type of inflammation or underlying something that's causing the lack of flexibility. Mobility, there's mobility, and then there's kind of like functional mobility or active mobility. And that is really where the joints are going in the motions and the movement patterns that you're doing. So how mobile are you is how are you moving. Flexibility, I relate it to like how flexible is this one joint and when you're moving it, your leg, your arm, right? Mobility is how is it moving through the range of motion in the joint and how it's designed to be. Well, you have active and passive mobility. Passive mobility in range of, I would say passive range of motion. Passive range of motion would be where you could pull your muscle into. For instance, I'll just say if you're standing up and you pull your knee into your body, you might be able to pull your knee all the way into your body. Well, the second you let your hand go, does your leg stay there or does it drop? If it drops, where it drops to and where you can lift your knee up on its own, that would be your active range of motion. And so what I help players do is to help improve their active range of motion. So then their active range of motion increases the mobility or their ability to be more mobile and to create more mobility in their body because they can go into further ranges with strength. Like if a guy is going back to catch a ball and they go way back, if he goes way back and then he's able to catch it way back there and has the ability actively to do it, then he's going to have a lot more ability to throw from that range as opposed to getting back there and then like, oh shit, and get hurt all the way back there. In anything, whether he's diving or throwing or just general movement. So mobility, hopefully that answered it. I could sum it up again, but
No.
I guess
No, that
time.
I thought it explained it well. And like everything that we just talked about, to me, seems very complex. So if you had to break it down to a coach like me, that's a high school coach, and I need to do, mobility training for my players, how would you break that down and how would you suggest we move?
Great question, because it does kind of sound complicated. To me, it doesn't, right? So I just say get everybody's body in whack. If your shit's out of whack, your players are going to be out of whack. So as simple as possible. The underlying structure, get it in whack because most of the time it's going to be out of whack. And that is honestly, those cues, they may sound complicated at first hearing them. How do I incorporate opposition into my team, into my players? But once you just practice the concept over and over and over and over, you can't unknow it. When a body moves like it's supposed to, the player feels it and you can't unknow it. They may get out of whack at some point, but they will always remember, oh, what did it feel like when I was in whack and I was in the flow? So to break it down is just to incorporate it simply is if you're looking at your players, having them move with intention. Make mobility. It's like what I do, like mobility check, right? It's not just about mobility. It's just kind of an easy way to describe what I do, but it's intentional movement and awareness through the movement and understanding that it's way more important than people are thinking that it is. People don't really make time for, really long warm-ups because they've got their whole practice planned. Well, you can do a lot of these drills throughout the practice. If a guy's shagging balls in the outfield, there's a drill you can do where you're standing up, put an elbow up, the opposite knee up, push it forward and inhale 3 times, boom, you're done. You just did a drill that helped increase trunk rotation and helped to balance their pelvis and their rib cage. It's just a matter of, are you committed to do it? Are you it's not about drinking the water or drinking the Kool-Aid, right? That one. It's not about, well, I'm going to do all these things that are fancy and sexy, as some people call, or I'm just going to stick with what works. Well, times have changed. And so we kind of have to also, and just kind of being humble and open and say, you know what? Am I going to be willing to just try one thing? That's what I said at the summit in Augusta. I think I showed you guys one drill or maybe a couple drills. And I just said, if you just take one of any of the drills from my mobility warm-up and bring it back, one, I'm only going to show you one because just bring this one back. And then next year, I'll show you another one and bring that one back. Over time, little by little by little, you'll pick it up. I think a lot of coaches are intimidated because it's like, oh my God, I got to totally revamp everything that I'm doing. And it's kind of overwhelming and they're not stuck, but comfortable in how they've been doing it. It doesn't need to be this big giant shift of everything's, out and in with the new. Just do one thing. And so to make it simple is kind of what I shared. And then if you want to try it, my mobility warm up, just do one thing new. That's
Yeah,
it.
it's very similar to like when we do our throwing program, our catch play. Okay, so I believe there's 20 different drills within that sequence that we do. And I didn't walk out on the field and say, okay, guys, here's the 20 drills, let's do it. It doesn't work like that. We did
Right.
3, we mastered those, then we gave them 3 more, and the next thing you know, you're doing 20. So it's a similar thing, right?
Yeah, little
No,
by little. And it helps to create those neural pathways that I was talking about, the cornfields, right? One to the next to the next.
yeah. So, I mean, in other words, if you're doing dynamic or you're doing static stretches, you know what? Don't stop doing that for the time being, but maybe take out your first 3 and put in 3 mobility. Okay. Then next time, take out another 3 and put in 3. Is that a good
Yeah.
way to do it?
Yeah, I would even break it down to just do
Just do one.
just do one and get one really good form, really intentional movement. Just one. Like that's what I did with my 7-year-old. I coach his little league team, and as I was talking about those feral cats, I have a drill where you start kneeling. Everybody kneels in a row in a line, and they're kind of in a low lunge position or like take a knee. That's the kind of position that they're in. And I'm not looking for the 7-year-olds to have great form. It's just like, just kneel and get in line. And then they take the ball. There's a bucket with the first guy, and he takes the bucket and he brings it up over his arm, and then he kind of windmills it to the guy behind him. And that guy takes it, and we go up and around. Honestly, we practiced that one drill all season, and by the end, they were then doing relays with it. It was really fun. But the first 3 times, it was a complete shit show.
Sure.
So anybody watching would say, you're failing at that drill. But we're actually winning because those kids, in any age you do it, they're not going to get it the first time. Yeah. So be easy and know that it's not that the drill sucks. It's that they're doing new stuff. So just master one.
Yeah.
Just master one, I would say. So you don't even need 3. Just master one. And then if you feel like you've mastered it, like really mastered it, and be overly obnoxious about how intentional they need to be with their form, it's going to fix all the other things around. It really does. You fix one thing, it's like all ships rise. You improve one drill, everything else improves, and they'll see the improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to worry about me being overly obnoxious. I can do that really easily with my players. But again, that same concept works when I'm trying to work with a hitter. I don't take a hitter that has, let's say he has 6 swing flaws. I don't try and fix all 6 of them at once. I go for one. Let's fix one, because that's going to take 1,500 swings to fix. And then once we get it right, then we'll move on to the next one. So the concept is the same. But here's something else that I need to know from you. Mobility and recovery. Okay. How does that work?
It's all one.
Okay.
So we're talking about the dynamic stretches. I was actually thinking about recovery. So when I really like incorporating mobility into recovery because the body's already warm. So we can use the warmth that is happening, that exists at the time, to work on a little bit of active range of motion. So working on that functional mobility. But then also, when we can put our body into positions that our nervous system feels safe and just kind of relax into them, it's going to help with the recovery and the repair so much better. So I love incorporating simple things like CARs, controlled articular rotations, and those are positions or drills where you move the joint in its full range of motion, because it sends messages to the brain. It's called afferent feedback. It sends clear messages to our brain. Oh, this is how the joint is supposed to work. And we do it gently. So then the system, the communication between our body improves. And it's great when the body's already warm. I have a full recovery too. It's important.
So in other words, when you're saying the body's fully warm, so guy just goes out and he has an outing on the mound. Okay, so he comes back in after his outing, and is this when he's doing these recovery drills?
Yeah, I would say like when the game's over, or if he's done pitching and another guy comes in after him, you could do them then.
Okay.
Though that would be a good time to do that. I mean, give them a little bit of time, right? It doesn't have to come off the mound and immediately start doing it. But those controlled articular rotations, specifically in the shoulders and the hips, would be the two that I would do because you're already open in that. And then I don't really do a lot of twists with the body. I don't even use the word twist in any of my training. I call it rotation because most people, when they do a twist, they wring themselves out like a towel. And that's just, most people get junked up at a particular area of their T-spine and just puts more compensation. So just like gentle movements and loving movements. Like I think a lot of people are really, especially athletes, are really hard on themselves. And I think a lot forget that we're all humans too, guys and girls. We all have that inner child within us that needs to be comforted and feel safe and loved. And let us know that it was just a game and it's going to be okay. Whether you had a good game or a bad game, right? It's still just a game and it's just a life experience. So taking that time just to be really mindful and loving and supportive of ourselves in that recovery, it really helps to improve moving forward, the mindset and the body.
I love the way you put that because I say that to my players all the time. Not exactly the same thing, but I tell them, I say, guys, it's a kid's game. Let's go out there and play like kids. Kids, just go out there and have some fun, and whatever happens, happens. We're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but it's a kid's game.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's that the number one goal is to have fun. I know everybody thinks it's about winning, but if nobody's having fun, that like what are you really winning?
Right,
You know?
exactly. So if you had to wrap all of this up into a nice little package with a little bow on it, what would your suggestions to, high school coaches, youth coaches, what should they do to incorporate your stuff, how to do it?
Well, first I would say go to my Instagram, follow me, right? Because I share a lot of stuff there. And if there's not new stuff, just scroll down through my page and there's tons of drills and I'll explain what they do. And it's to help, some of them are to help improve hitting, throwing, and just even the coaches. Honestly, I've had so many coaches reach out and say, my body hurts, like sitting on a bed, and hitting, throwing BP and all of that. These drills are really helpful for you too. And if your players are doing it, I would really encourage you to do it. And thinking about that intentional movement and just slowing it down just a little bit. It doesn't have to be this 15-minute warm up that completely changes everything. It's just baby steps, like little steps here and there. So to kind of wrap it all up, it doesn't need to be that complicated. I might have said a lot of big words and shared a lot of concepts that you may or may not have heard before or been comfortable with. But when we can get the underlying structure in whack for us as coaches and parents, but then for the players, it's going to get the rest of the body balanced. The mobility, the flexibility, the performance, the injury reduction is all going to fall into place and it's going to improve performance because when everything is balanced inside, like mind, body, soul, structurally, physiologically, everything else balances better. Everything else improves. So starting with one thing, here's a new thing. Here's something new. I just read at the end is most people breathe wrong. Most people are breathing and they're breathing shallowly into their chest. And when they breathe, their shoulders are rising, their neck, you can see the muscles in their neck, right? If you see on video, what that is doing is that's your body in a state of fight or flight. If you are just chest breathing, your body's not really, really relaxed. Your nervous system is like, what? So if you could just think about a new way to breathe once or twice and practice it. I actually practice it a lot. Pretend that you need to create expansion, not pretend, actually do it, to create expansion. Make your back ribs move, not because you're automatically moving your body. It's through your breath. So if you're just sitting here, if you can kind of just get yourself relaxed a little and then exhale all of your air, like obnoxiously, like all your air, all more. Put your hands on your sides, like on your side where your obliques are, all your air out and breathe out until you feel your side abs engaged. Now keep your side abs engaged. And now inhale. And it's weird at first. Honestly, you're like, what the heck am I doing? Is anything moving? It's kind of hard to breathe. What happens is when you create the side ab tension, it's helping to keep your front ribs kind of down. And when you inhale, there's nowhere else for your air to go. So your lungs have to push in a different spot. So we're so used to chest breathing in this up and down motion of our whole body moving. But when we create the side ab tension and our rib cage stays locked down, the air has to go somewhere. So it expands outwards into the sides. So if you can create, just thinking about what's called 360-degree breathing, it's no longer in the front breathing, it's to the side and the back breathing. I say breathe into your back ribs. When you do that, that's going to improve your trunk rotation. That's going to improve so much stuff. And it's going to help the nervous system feel a little bit more calm. So there's like, everybody wants, oh, what's the simple? But you kind of need to know the why behind it as well. So then you kind of understand, oh, well, why am I doing this? And maybe the players don't need to know. If they're super young, they don't need to know. But the older ones really do appreciate the why. Yeah. And then they realize, oh, not only in baseball, I should be doing this, but in the other sports that I'm playing, or if any of your kids have anxiety, performance anxiety, or just anxiety in real life, taking tests, stress going on with their family or boyfriends or girlfriends, just that breathing alone helps to calm the nervous system. And it fixes like everything. And if you can do that breathing while you're doing exercises too, I mean, like I could talk for hours about breathing and structural alignment, but packaging it up in a bow would be start with one thing small, nail it, like really nail it, and be gentle on your players and yourself. You do it yourself. Opposition, triple S, and that 360 breathing. Pick any one. Pick any one, and you are winning.
Yep, I love it. And I especially love what you said about the coaches having to do it, because I know me, I can't teach something unless I can feel it. So I have to be able to do it first, and then I can teach it to my players. And if I have to do it alongside them, I love that. So that's great. So one more time, give everybody your information, your Instagram, your website, and all of that, so that if they want to reach out to you, they know where to get you.
So it's mobilitychick.com, MOBILITY, chick, CHICK. I'm Mobility Chick on Instagram too. So Instagram, just Mobility Chick. Or if you just Google Mobility Chick or Tracy Tanguay, that's all me. There isn't another one. And you can find a way to DM me if you have any questions. You can't find the warm-up. The warm-up right now, I have two warm-ups. One that's my first warm-up and then an updated warm-up. The free one, or the old, well, I'll say the old one, the original is free. But the new one has like a ton of really, really good shit in it. It's cheap, but it's worth it.
Well, Tracy, look, I mean, I knew that this was going to be a great episode, but I got to tell you something. I am now a better coach than I was an hour ago from listening to this. So I want to thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate you having me. I know we've been talking about it for a while, and I'm so glad we finally made it work. Thank you. Great questions. I love sharing, and thank you everybody for listening as well.
You going to Austin in November?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we'll see you then. And thanks again. I think this was great.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, everyone.
And that right there is going to wrap up our conversation with Tracy Tanguay, the one and only Mobility Chick. So if you've ever had the privilege of hearing Tracy speak, you know she brings this incredible mix of knowledge and energy. She's not just teaching stretches or exercises. She's teaching a way of approaching your body with respect, curiosity, and consistency. You can hear it in her voice how much she enjoys doing this. So, today we got a front row seat to how she thinks about movement, performance, recovery, and the overall connection between the body and the mind. She really broke it down. Mobility isn't just something for elite athletes or people dealing with an injury. It's really for all of us. It's for the coach who's been on their feet all weekend at a tournament. It's for the player who wants to add years to their career. It's even for the parent who wants to just keep up with their kids. It's for anyone who wants to feel better, move better, and just live better. What I really love is that Tracy makes it simple. It seems that she has a gift for taking something that can feel like really overwhelming, the science of movement, the complexity of a human body, and turning it into small, doable steps that you could start right now. And she does it with a smile and a laugh. So thanks, Tracy, not just for sharing your expertise today, but for the way you're out there every day helping people take care of themselves so they can keep doing what they love. And if you're not already following her, go do it. Watch her videos, read her posts, and try out the things she shares. Your body will thank you. So, if you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Visit the website at thectbshow.net. Listen to your favorite episodes and please leave us a review. You can also reach out to the show on social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and get this, the old man has finally got us on TikTok. Keeps me young. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, please drop us an email at clearingthebases@gmail.com. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content and reach more people in the baseball community just like you. And also, let me know if you'd like to be a guest. Until then, coaches and players, keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.